notification bells on YouTube and become part of the Patreon family at jfree906. I'm really excited about today's guest. Follow along as you see today's guests. Bye.
All right, we are live. Hey, welcome everyone to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I am your host, Jeff Freeman, and returning as my special co-host, we have Alessandra Nadudvari. Welcome, Alessandra.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Hello, everybody.
I am so glad to have you here. And I know that a lot of people, probably some people, may not know all about you, Alessandra. So I'd like to take just a moment, if we could, before we bring on our special guest tonight. I'd like to tell us a little bit. Now, you live, or actually you don't live, but you own property up in New Ross, Nova Scotia, right?
Yes, that's right, Jeff. My husband, Tim, and I own the so-called castle in the town of New Ross. It was featured on the Curse of Oak Island in season 4 and on some other shows and in books. So it's quite mysterious, and we're still trying to find out how it's linked to Oak Island. I'm also a local author. I write fiction for teens, I guess. You can see my books right behind me. And I'm just a big fan of the Curse of Oak Island and the mystery of the treasure, Titanic, flood tunnels. I watch every episode. So I guess I have been following that mystery for many, many years now, even before the Curse of Oak Island started.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing, is that you are such a great researcher. And we've had you on, featured you as our guest before, and that was twice, and that was great. And you've helped me co-hosting a couple of times. I tell you what, it's awesome to have you here. And I know that being a researcher and also an author in those books behind you, you have a website. What's your website? The address to your website?
www.adventuresofnikki.com.
All right.
Adventures of Nikki is the name of my series, and I also have a YouTube channel that's called Templar Island, and I post interviews there. Oh, you're subscribed? Okay, awesome. Well, I am subscribed to your channel, so we pat each other's back.
Yep. So check that out, folks. If you have not been there before, it's www.adventuresofnikki.com, and then the YouTube channel again was, what was that?
Templar Island.
Templar Island. Okay, cool.
Because I think that Oak Island was visited by Templars.
I do too. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for co-hosting with me here tonight. Jack stepped aside one more time to allow in to have you come on, and we just love having you on. He was more than happy to do that. So anyway, all right, folks, we have our very special guest on with us here tonight. I'm about to bring him on, and he is the CEO of Abbott Underwater Acoustics. They are based, I believe he lives in Michigan, in Lower Michigan. And without further ado, let's bring on Brian Abbott. Mr. Abbott, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. It's good to be here with you guys. Nice to meet you.
I tell you what, there's so many times that we are interviewing some of our theorists that have been on Oak Island and talking with them. And that's wonderful. And we love getting that information from them. It's also nice every now and then, like tonight, to look at the more technical side of things that have happened on the island. And I know you've been involved in 10X, scanning 10X and all of that. We'll get to that as we go along. But I wanted to spend just a few minutes, if we could, learning a little bit about you and your company. So now you've been involved in the underwater acoustics and the scanning and sonar for quite a few years. Am I right?
Yeah. Originally, I started as an engineer. Take it way back. My dad was a bridge engineer in the state of Michigan, and many years ago, he retired from MDOT and started his own bridge company. And I was just kind of farting around at the time, and I was working for him part-time here and there. And he hired a commercial diving company to do an underwater inspection of a bridge.
Oh, wow.
And my dad didn't quite get commercial diving, and the divers didn't understand anything my dad wanted. So it was kind of like a light bulb moment to me. So I went back to school and got my degrees in civil engineering. Then I went overseas to Scotland. In Fort William, there's a city called There was the Underwater Center. It's now defunct, but it was a commercial diving school.
Oh, wow.
They trained divers to work in the North Sea and so forth. So I went to school there for about 5 months, learning the commercial diving trade. Then I took that into the civil engineering world, doing underwater inspections of structures. So
Wow.
bridges, dams, ports and harbors, and so forth. It's diving. People got to understand diving is a mode of transport to the work site. And so that's how I looked at it. I'm there to inspect a structure and so forth. And, I was doing it for several years and so forth. And I had a kind of an epiphany on a bridge I was inspecting. And there was a huge hole under this bridge. And it was filled with logs and shopping carts and bicycles. And it was zero visibility and 45-degree water. And I didn't have any idea how to inspect the size of this hole. And I'll be honest with you, I missed the size of the hole. It was triple the size of the hole I thought it was. So the people weren't real happy with what I told them as an engineer, and I'm supposed to be an engineer of record and a big PE and stuff. So I needed a better way. And I ran into this person at a trade show that was talking about using sonars to map things underwater. And they were using it in the oil and gas field in the Gulf of Mexico and stuff. Right. And I was like, nah, I don't want anything of that. I'm an engineer and I'm a diver. He goes, no, you need to come talk this. And he finally kind of strong-armed me, and I went into the trade show, and I sat down, and I was blown away by what he did. And I ran over to him after the show, and I said, look, we're going to the bar, and get ready because we're going to talk about this, because I seen how to use it right away for bridges and dams. Because as a diver, if you're working in zero visibility, you can't see anything. And you're supposed to be an engineer inspecting how big, how much deterioration, how big's the crack, how long's the crack, all this type of stuff. But if I can give you an image that shows you this, then I can do measurements just like that on that structure there. You can see the crack in the lattice work or the timber frames that is cracked there, and the ballast is poured out into the riverbed there.
Right here.
Yeah, and you can see that one picture. Now, if I write a report, everyone's going to have their own different type of understanding what they see in their mind on this stuff. But with sonar, I was able to come in and take an image of this in less than a minute and get that data and information. So I was one of 2 other companies in the world that were starting this kind of infrastructure system. So, and I did some really interesting stuff for a while. Then the manufacturer hired me part-time, which I've been with since Konigsberg, to work part-time with them on special projects and test prototype equipment for them. So that's kind of what I do. I primarily do infrastructure things, but the infrastructure pays for me to go play, as I call it, to do shipwrecks, sunken cities, MIA work in the Pacific or Europe, looking for planes or tanks or vehicles that are lost in rivers or lakes and so forth. So pretty much anything underwater I'll go after and do. Yeah, that's this was what I consider pretty much hallowed ground. This is on the island of Tarawa, where in November 1943, the Marine Corps hit the beaches, and we went out and we found 12 vehicles out there, landing craft and tanks and stuff that, as far as we know, nobody knew about. We're supposed to go back and look for a B-25 that's still missing.
Oh my goodness.
So I take this really serious, and I really enjoy it. And it really brings a really good peace of mind to give closure to some family member that may be a great uncle or a brother to somebody if they're still alive and so forth. So pretty much anything underwater, I'll pretty much map and take a strike at to do stuff. I pretty much love finding what's underwater. So
that's fascinating.
Thank you.
So also I know that and I learned this by watching the episodes that you were on. Now you were in several episodes. Of course, we know there was season 2. I think it was, let's see, my notes say episode 9 and 10. You were in season 3, episodes 1 and 6. You were in season 4. And during that time, when I was reviewing all of this, and I had forgotten it until I went back and was watching those, that it talked about the fact that you were part of a team that was working with the getting visuals on the Titanic. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was part of the 2010 mapping expedition that went out. It was kind of bizarre to me because my dad, being a civil engineer and building bridges, always had to say, Brian, where's down at? So where's the point of 000? Where are you going to start? And there had been like 27, 26 expeditions to Titanic. And this is what it was explained to me. And nobody knew where anything was. It was like, okay, if we go to this position here, we drop down the submarine, and if we go this bearing, we'll run into the bow. Then if we go this far at this direction, we'll run into the stern section. And I was like kind of blown away by that. But that whole expedition, from the people on Woods Hole and other people that came as part of this huge conglomeration of teamwork, used the deepwater AUV systems to map a huge area, 1 by 2 miles, and target anything in that whole area. Then I was brought in to do acoustic imaging of the bow section of Titanic. And from that, I was kind of be able to create one of the first 3D cloud points of the bow section of Titanic and show what's kind of happening with the ship itself and so forth. And there's a lot of cool, fascinating things. I don't know a lot about Titanic. I leave that up to kind of the experts. I look at it as a big piece of steel down there to go acoustically image and let the people interpret what needs to be done and so forth. And, but there's a lot of things about it that's I learned that are, kind of depressing at times when you find out the people that perished on that ship and so forth. I just got back from the Baltic Sea. I was working on the passenger liner Estonia that sunk in 1994. I was out there doing a preliminary assessment for the Swedish government on that ship that, 852 people passed away on that. So it's always kind of like, it's cool to go do these projects and you realize the loss of life on there can be, it's kind of hard to think about at times, because I love kids. I got my own kids and stuff. When you think about kids in a dark room filling with water and crashing through the depths, it's kind of hard to take at times. So
yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's Titanic had a lot of cool understanding of working at that depth that we needed to figure out how to map that. So we used side scan and multi-beam systems. We used ROV systems. I know the guys at Wood Hole, they took probably, 50,000 pictures all over Titanic and stuff. And they were hoping to bring together a huge kind of like photographic mosaic of the ship and kind of in 3D. So I don't know whatever happened to that at all. I was kind of part of the, of the upper deck on a lot of things where we're going. But the thing that I found that was pretty cool about it, I was able to map, is that if you look at the tip of Titanic, where where the bow is, and to the bottom where the keel is 30 meters roughly. But if you map it above the mud line, it's only 7.92 meters, so 8 meters. Wow. So you have 22 meters that's kind of missing or crushed underneath that hull. And so I don't know if it's buried in the mud or it's collapsed on itself and so forth. So, simple things like that hadn't been found out, that we were able to go in and use that. I took another partner of crime, I call him, my good friend Dan Vasey, who is a phenomenal ROV pilot, works out in Santa Barbara City College as the program director out there for commercial diving ROV operations out there. So we took him, so he assisted me in a lot of things and kept me out of trouble in a lot of ways. So it's because like, no, you can't do that, Brian. It's not a good idea. Well, yeah, we need to. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. So Dan was a really good partner for me in that project. So, but yeah, it was a real pleasure to be part of that expedition in 2010.
Yeah, that would be fascinating to be out there for sure. And I know that, and like you said, obviously there's some sort of that depressing feeling, knowing that so many people lost their lives, and especially not only with the Titanic, maybe some of the other things that you've done, but also, like you said, with the MIA stuff, being out there and looking for those vehicles and plane crashes and things like that. That has to be sort of surreal. I mean, in a way, because you're helping people identify those who have been lost.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know. Have you had, do you actually work with the families at all? I mean, were you connected with that, or was it just trying to get the information for them?
Sometimes it's families, sometimes it's organizations such as History Flight or Bent Prop that we've done things. One of the things that I just kind of like, it was kind of like a gut blow to me, was that on Tarawa we found a Higgins boat that was broken in two, but unfortunately it was loaded with M1 rifles and helmets in about 12 feet of water. And so that whole thing told me that there were a bunch of Marines that were in that boat trying to get to the beach, and either it got hit by an artillery shell or a mine or something and broke in two. But there was probably 20 M1 rifles that we've seen and so forth on the bottom of that floor of the lagoon there. So yeah.
Wow. Man, I tell you, that's got to be interesting. And I know that, and I could, this isn't the actual show for it. Maybe we'll have to have you back at some time.
Sure.
To talk about, because there is John Edwards and I are going to be working on a show coming up where we're talking about different types of things beyond our world is what it's called. We're going to be getting into not only UFOs, UAPs, but also the paranormal. And
oh, really? Okay.
I kind of wanted to ask you for a second about that, but again, I mean, you would get some. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll kind of get into that a little bit as we talk about Oak Island, because I know in the pre-show we kind of discussed that just a little bit.
Yeah.
But okay, so that I tell you, it with you doing all this interesting work like that, like you said, it's got to be fascinating, not only in the respect that it kind of probably feels like, in a way, it kind of seems to me like it'd be like a hobby that you get to do that is so rewarding in the end. But it's also your job. I mean, is that kind of how it feels to you on that?
Oh yeah, I'm playing. I never want to retire. I don't want to quit. The only problem I have right now is all the COVID issues in flying.
Yep.
It's just a pain in the butt. But if I see a piece of water, I want to know what's on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it can be a local pond at an apartment complex, or it can be the Pacific Ocean. And there's so many myths and legends out there. Unfortunately, I go down a lot of rabbit holes and reading and TV shows just to keep abreast of things, because I will get at least 1 or 2 phone calls a week of somebody wanting me to go do something on some form of expedition to wherever to look for something. And you can name it, somebody's anchor, off the coast of Malta, some ghost ship somewhere. There's just a lot of stuff I get involved with, and I've got to be careful. So I do try and read. I do try and follow things on TV, probably too much, in the whole area of, the mystery, the unknown, and so forth. So I do try and keep myself abreast of that.
Absolutely. So I tell you what, let's, we could talk. I'm just fascinated by what you do. And I know as we go along here, I'm going to be asking you some questions about some of the equipment. Now during the show on the Curse of Oak Island, we saw you using the sonar devices, and I think I had written down the name of it, and I forgot. I don't know exactly where it is, but Spectrum 90. Oh, that was a Spectrum 90 camera. But anyway, that there's the side scanning, there's all these different types of pieces of equipment that I'm sure you work with that we'll get to as we go along here. But let's take us to Oak Island now a little bit. Right. Now, how did it come about that you were able to be asked to be on the show? How did that come about?
As I said earlier, I work part-time for Kongsberg Mesotech, the largest manufacturer in the world of underwater acoustic equipment, whether it's multi-beams, ships, differential positioning systems, but they make another tool called the MS-1000 scanning sonar. And I've gotten to be pretty good using it over the years, and my boss at the time there in Vancouver, Canada, got a call from somebody, I forget who it was, and said, hey, we want to go image this hole down here on Oak Island. And Mark at the time kind of laughed and said, hey, this is a good job for Brian. I'm sending you out there. So as part of my contract with Kongsberg, he sent me out there. And one of the really good things out there is that I got another good partner in crime of a gentleman called Nick Burchill, who lives in Halifax, who works for Kongsberg.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick is one of the best guys you could ever have around. He's really smart, really good with equipment, but he is a load of laughs. Yeah, there he is right there. And he is, if you want stories about anything weird happening and stuff, you should have Nick on your program. I'm going to throw him under the bus, and you should get Nick on the program, because you'll have a great time. But I would love to. Yeah, I called Nick up. I'll put the word in for him and say,
all right, thank you. I appreciate that. I'd love to have him on. Both of you together, actually.
Yeah. So I have a great time with Nick when we go do work together and stuff. And like I said, think the world of him. But I called Nick up and said, hey, we're going to Oak Island. It's kind of your territory. Let's go have some fun and see what we can do. I had heard about Oak Island when I was a little kid, not the Reader's Digest version, but In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, I love that show.
Okay, that's how I remember the island. And I always fascinated, because what stuck with me is they had pictures of Franklin Roosevelt on the show, that he was in search of whatever was happening on Oak Island and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this thing is still going on, and no one knew what was right or wrong. And then I also teach part-time at a college in Michigan called Northwestern College up in Traverse City.
Mm-hmm.
They teach everything underwater acoustics. It's a phenomenal program. And these kids told me, hey, there's a couple of guys in Traverse City that have bought the island, and they're doing an exploration on the island looking for the gold. And I said, really? I said, so it kind of connected, it kicked back to that TV show with Leonard Nimoy as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got there and I found out who Marty and Rick were, and Craig Tester and so forth, it really kind of blew me away. But I came on through Kongsberg to the island to do this imaging of 10X, as they call it, as I learned later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there's Dan Henske in the background, who's a great character, good guy. That was Commander. I don't know whatever happened to him. He was on the show quite a bit. And there's David Blankenship right there.
Right.
So we were just getting ready. I looked at the project as okay, let's take it from an engineering perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What was really cool about this project for me, it wasn't that 10X had any lore or legend to me at all. I built 10X as something that I learned off of to how to map tunnels and how to use that data and information, because now I can go in, I can map tunnels for dams. Mm-hmm. and see what structural defects are and stuff. The hard part was going through the 27-inch hole opening into the cavity of 10X to see what was there. So with Nick helping me out a huge deal in providing a lot of the skilled work that we were able to do, we were able to get in there, map inside the shaft of the rail cars, as they call it, because Dan Blankenship had taken rail cars, tipped them on the side, cut the ends off, and drove them straight down, and which is kind of unique to begin with. It was pretty fascinating. Yeah. But then we were able to image inside the rail cars. Then through some kind of stupid luck, we kind of fished, dropping the sonar around till we hit the 27-inch hole, then went through the 27-inch hole with the umbilical into the shaft. And what we would do is that every foot we would spin the sonar 360 degrees, and it would take a sonar record. Mm-hmm. And so from that, it's like a series of pancakes. And then we're able to put those pancakes together and create the void under the 27-inch shaft, and also show imaging within that cavity there. Yeah, there you go, right there. So we're able to take a look and see the size and dimensions. And, we were able to find a couple of tunnels. There are openings that were in the cavity there. Yeah, well, there's one right there, and so forth, and over in that area too. Yep. So I can't remember quite what the dimensions were. I think it was like 15 by 8 or something like
by 12 is what I had.
8 by 12?
8 feet on the bottom and 12 feet more toward the top. Yeah.
Right. And so we found some targets down on there. And one of the things you've got to be careful, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus and saying this was good or bad or anything, but you can't come out and say, hey, this looks like a body. This looks like a body, because you don't know, because, there have been times where I have found the wrong body before. I have found the wrong airplane before, and what do? And it looks like an airplane, but it's not an airplane. I'm sorry. It's just the way it goes acoustically. And so until you can identify with a human eye, you can do that. And one of the problems I had with 10X was Marty Lagina would come to me and say, look, tell me what you think is down there. And I'd say, well, I think this, but I said, the problem is that I don't know how to get a diver down there. I even been a commercial diver like me, I'm a wide load to begin with, and there's no way I'm fitting through a 27-inch hole. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, Marty, if this was 10 feet of water, I would have a diver down there immediately. And he said, okay. So that's when he figured out, and through the TV network connection with Prometheus, they were able to contact John Chatterton, who became the diver. And I've known John for several years. Phenomenal diver, one of the best in the world. But he's a tall, skinny guy. And, when I freaked out when I heard that somebody was going down the shaft, because I was supposed to be there. And I was like, man, this is an accident waiting to happen. This is the seventh man and everything. But when I found out it was John Chatterton, I took a deep breath and said, okay, if anybody can do it, John can. Yep. And so he was able to work his way in through that and get himself into the cavity of 10X. And that blew me away. But talking with John about it, he said, he dove it 1,000 times before he even hit the water. And so he had everything in his mind. Yep. And he's done some pretty phenomenal stuff that people don't know about. Everyone knows him from the scuba world or the rebreather world, where he's done deep water shipwreck stuff and Andrea Doria stuff and a lot of stuff. He's done some pretty phenomenal stuff in the commercial diving world too. That is like, wow, that's impressive. And so when I think some of the misnomers, because we identified things down there that it looked like a box, it looked like a box. We had the outline, what appeared to be a body on there. There were several different sonar angles that the material looked like the decomposition of the body. And the way I'm going to understand to say this is that, as another branch of what I do, is I train police departments around the world, from FBI all the way down to local law enforcement, on how to do body recovery, evidence recovery on crime scenes using sonar and divers. So we use the sonar to take the diver into the body. There you go. It looks like an arm there. It appears to be is inconsistent. You use the waffle words. But when I told Marty Lagina, like, yeah, you need to get a diver down there. And it looks like where the head would be is you got some sort of a box. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's been enhanced by the, on the right, there's been enhanced by the people at Prometheus, their entertainment industry, through their magic and stuff, to bring that out so people can see that. And so they didn't change anything there, the data and stuff. So we were able to get in there, and, John Chatterton got in there, and he walked around. I wasn't there when he did the dive and stuff. Oh, wow. But he was able to get in, walk around, identify the things. And so people were concerned about stuff that over time that, because we went back and rescanned it, because people said, well, did John move anything? Did he pick anything up? Well, he picked up what we thought was this box. chest, whatever you want to call it.
Yep. I was going to ask you about that. Yep.
Yeah. And he said it was a rock. So it's like, okay, you know, that kind of, you know, that popped a lot of balloons on.
It popped mine for sure.
Yeah, on Oak Island. So,
Brian, I'm sorry to jump in.
No, go ahead.
Did he bring up that rock? Did he
No.
bring it up to the surface?
No, it's down there. You know, it's very soft sediment, so he was kicking up a lot of you know, sediment in the water column, so it made it difficult to see after a while. And so he did another exploration. He did identify that were openings and so forth. I don't remember if he said, I don't think he went back any farther. He spent about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes down there. You got to understand, he's 237, 238 feet down, and he's 180 feet in the water. So, you know, he's running on air or mixed gas probably to do this job. So he's got a limited time frame where he needs to get out and not have to worry about decompression and all that type of stuff. And so he did his time down in there looking around and trying to find things, identify things. John said he didn't really see anything. It appeared to be a natural thing for him, a cavern wise, maybe, that he kind of, if I remember correctly, that he identified it as. So it was kind of like, okay, that put a lot of monkey wrenches into a lot of plans and people's beliefs and ideas about 10X on Oak Island.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I felt bad about it because it was like I was the one directing them, but to tell them that, yeah, I would put divers down on that. Then it's like, okay, where do we go? What do we do now? And because there's people that are so committed to Oak Island and the legend, the lore, and trying to find out answers for Oak Island. And this was just kind of a gut blow for a couple of people there. And, you know, but Rick and Marty and Craig took it in stride. They're like, okay, that's one closed door. Let's go find another door to open up. And, you know, in my opinion, they've opened up a can of worms that they're trying to figure out, because one of the things that makes me laugh about the whole Oak Island thing is that before they couldn't really, they could do pretty much anything they wanted within reason on the island. And then when they started to find things, they said, well, wait a minute now. You're going to need an archaeologist here. Well, I've seen the shows from this year, and they've got like 6 archaeologists running around on the island, and they can't do anything without an archaeologist now. They couldn't get anybody to pay attention to them 8 years ago.
Right.
And so I find that really funny about stuff like that in Oak Island. But it was an interesting experience, 10X. Like I said, I did it. I think I scanned the hole 3 or 4 times doing the work there for them. And just so we take there's animation of what we thought we were looking at there with the openings, possible stuff that was kind of, you know, put up there on shelves we looked at. John looked around up there, didn't see or feel anything. We had the 2 shafts there, you know, the 6-inch pipe that they put down. And that's also, and that other one was a 27-inch pipe. And I want to explain something. Do you have the one picture? There you go. There's a wireframe of everything there. There's a picture of a band mask diving headset. It was red.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you pull that up?
Let me pop this over and go find that. Yes, I do have that.
There's a great story to this, and I got to know Dan Blankenship fairly well. For whatever reason, he was really nice to me, and we had long talks and conversations, which Prometheus always wanted to get on camera, but we were always talking off camera about stuff and just, you know, life and his experiences and what he was doing. And he took me to the back room where this was, and I looked at it and I went, oh my God, you dove in that? And he was like, yeah, no big deal. I just got in there. You got to say, he went down over 200 feet down a 27-inch pipe.
Was it this?
In this. Yeah. That, and I've done testing commercial diving helmet testings for Kirby Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the people very well that make the yellow helmets that everybody sees in commercial diving and stuff.
Yep.
So I know the guys really well, and I sent them this picture. I said, guys, how old is this? And they said that's a Kirby Morgan bandmass number 8. It was made in the 1960s.
Wow.
But if you look at that, there's a green hose connecting up to it.
Yeah, right here.
That is a garden hose.
Oh,
okay.
no.
So Dan Blankenship was diving 200 feet on a garden hose.
Oh,
this
my
thing,
God.
it blew my mind. I just started laughing. I said, Dan, you're crazy. And he goes, yeah, but he says, it got me down there to look around because Dan actually got into that. And they would do everything down there. They would drop dynamite down this shaft and stuff. And it actually collapsed on him one time. He got almost trapped. David had to pull him out.
Yeah,
and,
that's something that somebody asked about that. That was one of the members asked about that question about the collapse. Let's see. I was just trying to find that here real quick. So I could bring up their name. Let's see. Sorry about that. My goodness, I've lost it all of a sudden. But yeah, one of the members did ask about the collapse and what what was being. Now that was when he went down there, and I do remember that segment because they were talking about the fact that Dave had to hurry up and pull him up out of there and get him out and basically saved his life.
Yes,
but that was due to the dynamite.
Dan's main concern was that his wife would find out.
Yeah. But he was a hard-ass guy. I mean, he was a World War II veteran of the Battle of the Bulge, and not many things scared him and stuff like that. And I just sit there and to dive in a wetsuit like that and not be able to figure things out, and it's dark visibility, and you don't do that for a living. You haven't been trained. And a garden hose. I mean, that type of pressure, the thing will collapse on you, and you can't get air. Then you don't get air, you get narked out of your mind or whatever, you start losing it. And so he did some pretty crazy stuff, but he was a big time contractor in Miami before he came up to Oak Island.
Yeah.
And he really built 10X very well. People don't realize that. They laugh because he took rail cars and tipped them on their end and rammed them down and put them in the hole. But what you didn't realize, on the outside of that hole, he had a good 8 inches of concrete with rebar around it. So that hole wasn't going to collapse as they started driving sheet pile around that, or driving the rail cars down and stuff. So because they drove the 27-inch shaft, is my understanding, straight down to that cavity. Then they started bringing the rail cars in and building it bigger, like 7 feet 4 inches, and they just worked their way down the shaft and so forth. So yeah, it's on a hairstring budget, a wing and a prayer. So
I remember that Dan found cement-like material in the 10X. Did you find any of that?
No, I did not. I had heard that Dan did find some material. I mean, some of the legends that go with this stuff is that, if you bury a treasure there underground like that, and you kill a person, that person's soul protects the treasure. So anybody that goes in there looking for the treasure is going to be attacked by this spirit that's still there, and so forth, that protects the treasure. So that was kind of one of the stories floating around on what 10X is, and what could be down there and stuff. So yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I know that when you guys first, when you did the first scans back, and I guess this would have been season 2, episode 9, you did the first scans down there, and I believe that you weren't able to get anywhere with it because of the debris that had fallen down into and on top of the 27. It went down the big, and I don't know how big those rail cars were, how big around, but we see them on the show. We know they're pretty big around. But then you down to the 27, and then all the stuff that had fallen down in there and basically blocked the hole. That was
4 feet of debris. That's quite a.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, so I'm not going to name names, but somebody had a small deep trekker ROV. They're like this big, and they got a camera system on them, and they had like 400 feet of umbilical for the camera, and stuff had fallen down over time. Pieces of pipe. They hadn't done anything in 10X in years, and so stuff would branches and leaves and all that type of stuff would fall in. Well, he got the whole. He got the ROV stuck in at the bottom of the 7.25-inch shaft, okay, and trying to get it down to 27-inch pipe. Well, he didn't know what to do, so he took the whole spool of the umbilical and threw it into the 10X shaft, and it's like 400 feet of it, and it just went to the bottom, and it was just piled up, so it's a rat nest down there. And he thought he could then pull it back up and remove the ROV. Well, it didn't work. It just got stuck. And so you had 400 feet or 300 feet or whatever it was of umbilical down on the bottom of 10X. And so what they did, is my understanding, they hired a commercial diving company to come back in, and they went down to the bottom of 10X, just the shaft part, not the 27-inch, and pick everything up. They just went down to the bottom, and that's a pretty easy job for a commercial guy to go down and do that work. And you just need a basket to throw stuff in, and you can reach out here and touch the sides and so forth, so you know where you're at. And even if you do fall in a 27-inch hole, if you're built like me, you're not going to go very far. So, it's just something that needed to be done. So once they got everything cleaned out of there, everything was good. So
yeah, then I had a picture, and it was the Prometheus's artwork back in the studio showing that picture, and that kind of shows you the debris, and they're just showing dirt when there was pipe and all kinds of things actually in there that had fallen down, but that shows that. And then of course, once now this one shows you guys went down, didn't you go down like a riser pipe next to it?
Yeah, there's a 6-inch riser pipe kind of at the, if you set that at the 12 o'clock position, the 27-inch hole is about the 4 o'clock position.
Okay.
And so that was a real tight fit. We kind of gambled on that, because if I can come at something from a different perspective, I'm going to kind of light that up and see if I can get a different angle on that may cast a different perspective, so I can get two perspectives on something to see what it may be. So that's the reason we did that. That was a tighter fit. We got it stuck a couple of times, but we were able to get it out. So
yeah, I can imagine getting it stuck, and then you're like, oh my gosh, now what do we do? Here's all this piece of super expensive equipment down there. Oh yeah, that would not be good. I think I have a picture. Now you guys sent the camera, and I think that was where I started reading that earlier, the Spectrum 90 HD camera down. And I think that's where this picture was taken of some of the debris, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was the bottom of the 7-foot 4-inch hole where you see rebar and trash and all that type of stuff. That just
accumulated over all those years. Yeah,
all those years. It started to collect things, and it just needed to be cleaned out. That's just what you needed to do. So
right. So then somebody could then get access to the 27.
Yeah.
Wow.
Both acoustically and dive wise and stuff. So
yeah. And then I also have a picture of that. You guys were actually there we go. You guys were rigging up the camera. Here we go. This is one that I saw that this is the Spectrum camera, I believe. Yeah,
there it is there. Putting that down.
Now that's got to be another very expensive piece of equipment, but what's nice about it was able to give us some actual visuals down there versus the sonar, which gave us, a 3D, you had to kind of build a 3D rendering of it. This gave us actual pictures of what was down there. Now this was, you were working with your friend, and I've forgotten his name already.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a company out of Toronto. I forget the name of it. But yeah, very nice camera system. The problem was there was a lot of particulates in the water, so you get a lot of reflection off the particulates. So it didn't give you the range, and it was really too bad. Yeah, there you go. You see all this flaking taking place and so forth in there. The two red lines or orange lines you see are laser lines. They give you a measurement distance. I forget what that distance is. So if you're looking at something, you can get a rough idea of the size of that.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I remember this picture. Everybody was saying, gold, there's gold. That looks like gold. And everybody was like looking at the camera. They're all getting right down by the screen because they wanted to see the gold, but it turned out it was andrite or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an anhydrite geology there. And so there was flaking off the sides, and you just kick up a whole bunch of stuff in there. And you don't know if there are real tunnels there, either man-made or nature-made. Water's flowing from A to B, so it's going to pick up sediment and carry that away. So it's going to pick up different sediment sizes depending on the force of the water through those caverns, and depending on water table levels and stuff like that. So it for whatever reason, we had a very difficult time trying to pick up the sides of the wall and stuff like this to look at something from a photographic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Brian.
Sure.
So in the 1970s, there was a diver named Phil Irwin who got hired to dive down in the 10X. I believe he was the first diver to actually explore.
Yes. Yes.
He reported that he felt a very strong water current flowing through the 10X. Is it still there, or did that disappear or get blocked off?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't remember John Chatterton saying anything about a current, but one of the funny stories about Oak Island is that it was kind of after hours, and we were just sitting in the war room, and I was talking with Dan Blankenship about stuff, and everyone's saying, well, how many holes have been drilled on Oak Island and stuff? And Dan jumped in and says, I don't know, but he says, I've dropped the water table 35 feet on this island. And I just started laughing because that amount of water that you're dropping is huge. And if he really could do that, I mean, he's changed the whole water system on Oak Island and stuff by drilling that many holes and trying to pump stuff in and out and so forth. Mm-hmm. So it could very easily have changed the direction of groundwater flow because you're not that far from the mainland. And that mainland fresh water is going to go into the ocean some way, either on the surface or underground through different rock formations. And so that anhydrite down there is a kind of a softer material, and it's very easily erodible. So it could make its own ways through these things. And that's why, the tunnels could be, natural, like a fracture or fault line, or they could, we could go the other direction and say that they were man-made to bring in the treasure on Oak Island, so it's kind of take your pick anywhere in between those two.
Did you have a gut feeling about the 10X that maybe was confirmed, or no?
No,
no gut feeling?
I didn't really know much about Oak Island other than the TV show Looking for the Treasure and stuff. And so what happened, I've kind of stayed away from trying to guess who, what, when, why, where, and how. I come in and I do an objective, like, okay, this is what I need to do. And so what happened was I never got into the belief because, unfortunately, every known lost treasure in the world has been buried on Oak Island. And, and I don't mean that as a swipe at the people.
I understand. I think we get it, yeah.
I mean, everything from the menorah to the Ark of the Covenant to, African Krugerrands to whatever.
Aztec gold, yeah.
And, they've been finding huge amounts. Something happened on Oak Island. After this year, I am 100% believe something happened. You don't have that type of infrastructure or something to come in and build something like a wharf system. What are you unloading on a wharf system like that in the swamp? And so I don't have an idea really on who, what, when, or why. And I find it fascinating. I find it very strange that people would do this, and look, if that room is 8 by 12 or 10 by 12 down there at the bottom 10X, and I've read a lot about the Knights Templar, okay? I believe in a lot of their stuff, and you're going to need a lot bigger room to bury the treasure what the Templar Knights had than a 10 by 8 room, okay? You're going to need about 20 of them to bury the treasure on Oak Island than what's at the bottom of 10X, and so there's a lot of stuff that's you know, just so much is unknown yet.
Yep.
You know, I think they're
Absolutely.
putting stuff together. It's looking like, you know, you could say 1400 to maybe 1700 in that time frame
Yep.
of somebody came to Oak Island and they did
Or
something.
several somebodies.
Yeah, several over generations or whatever it
Mhm.
may be. And you know, and it's been fascinating. I mean, I've seen stuff where, you know, the Basque and the Portuguese were up around Newfoundland and Red Bay doing stuff in the 1300s. You know, they were having fishing camps over the summer, and they would take everything back to Spain or Portugal or whatever. And so they obviously knew something was going on in the New World. You know, Columbus officially got the title of it, but people, I think, were here long before. I mean, the Vikings
Yep.
were here in 1,000 years, you
Yep.
know? So
Yep.
uh, it's really tough. I've thought about it, but then it's just, I go crazy because there's so many lost treasures. You know, how many, you know, Spanish galleons are still missing in the world today
Mhm.
that could be unloaded or left on Oak Island, and because Spain controlled the New World for so long, you know.
Yep. Yep. Now you're talking Alessandra's, you know,
Yeah,
stuff right there. I seen her nodding when you were talking about all that because that's her research area
yeah,
right there for sure.
yeah. I mean, if you look at a group of people that had the technology, the know-how, the engineering, uh, and the gold,
Right.
you got to think of the gold. It'd be the Knights Templars come right up there because, you know, they were there. They had it, and you know, you can go back to what 1305 with Jacques de Molay, and everything disappeared. So where did it go? You know, I think some of it, you know, my personal opinion. I lived in Scotland for a while because I went to dive school there, but I believe Templar Knights showed up on the battlefield of Bannockburn for Robert the Bruce. And to me, that's the epitome of a tank showing up on the battlefield, a Templar
Yeah.
Knight on a horse. And
Yeah.
now you've got 100 of them or 200 of them, and you give them refuge in Scotland because, you know, for whatever reason, they fled to Scotland and so forth. So they turned it and gave Scotland their freedom at Bannockburn. I really believe that. So, yeah, it's fascinating to put those links together and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I got another picture here that I just have to
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about
Okay.
real quick. Is that now we know that, and you had, you know, we only knew basically of two times where you scanned 10x, but obviously you just got done saying there was like 5 times or whatever or more that you
Yeah,
scanned
3 or
10x.
4 times.
Yeah. Then the first time you did it, you know, you found that there was one of these, you know, like a post or something down there.
Mhm.
And then the second time you found, you know, it showed up as being 2. And I know this was discussed a little bit on the Drilling Down episode with Matty Blake when he was interviewing you all. You all were sitting in the room there. There was like 8 of you all, the Craig and Mark, Rick and Marty, and then Dave and everybody. And so is it still that there was 2, or was one of them one of the pipes that was showing up or something?
One was one of the pipes, and another was a drill shaft
Okay.
that Dan had lost down the
Oh,
6-inch hole.
okay.
And actually Chatterton went over and identified it when he was
Okay.
diving down there. He
So
said,
there was
"Yeah,
no
it's metal,"
post.
stuff like that. Yeah, it was not a wooden post.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, at least your scanning, your equipment was definitely doing its job, and it for sure picked it up. The other thing that I wanted to talk about on this particular picture here, or scan resolution here, is that, you know, we talked about the tunnel going through, and it looks like, and again, you know, it is it a perfect thing of what's down there? No, it's not, but it gives you a really good idea. But and again, it kind of looks like there is a tunnel running through, you know, on top
Absolutely.
and bottom. What's your take on that? Do you still feel that there was some sort of a tunnel, or was it just simply, you
Well,
know?
the tunnels can be, like I said, everything from nature creating groundwater rushing through, or
Right.
you know, they could be possibly man-made. I don't see a lot of things. John didn't really walk down them or crawl down them much, so you didn't see anything. One of the things that I found kind of interesting about the whole thing is that at roughly the 3 o'clock position there, you've got a right angle,
Mhm.
and in nature, yeah, right there. in nature, you don't see right angles.
Right.
Right angles, squares, rectangular, circular things are man-made. Nature's usually off a little bit because it just is. And so I seen that, and that's one of the things that it was kind of like, wow, that could be man-made. So I looked at everything and kind of said, all right, this is what we got going on. This is kind of a pancake layer at different elevations going down till we hit the bottom. And so when we put them together, it's still kind of stick figured a little bit, but I really believe that whether they're man-made or natural occurring, there are tunnels there. The data shows that, going back into, there's no acoustic return or reflection off this stuff. It just goes down and you don't get a return back up. So telling me that there's something open there.
Yeah, for sure. And then, and that was the thing on the drilling down with Matty Blake. There was a discussion, the question was asked of John Chatterton. And again, I'm not going to discount John at all because we know he's a very, very experienced professional diver. But the question was asked of him, actually a couple of questions. And this is what I thought was kind of odd. One of the questions was asked, do you think that those were a tunnel that you could walk in? And he said, in my opinion, no.
Okay.
And then he said even about crawling in, and he said, in his opinion, no. But then another question was asked, how much of that open area down there do you feel that you actually explored? And his question was like 10% or something very, very small amount. And I thought, well, wait a minute.
Yeah,
he's discounting, and again, I was disappointed. Let me just say that up front, folks, that I was disappointed when John came up and said, yeah, there's nothing to see here. And I was like, wait a minute, there's got, and all the things that Dan was pouring out of there, on the table that one time in the meeting, he was just throwing all these things out going, this was found, this was found, this was found, bits of chain and all this kind of stuff. But with that said, it didn't seem like he had really explored a large percentage of the area down there. So is it in my mind, it means that there's still a possibility that there could have been tunnels, that he may not have really found them. I don't know.
It could be, I remember that now that you brought it up and stuff like that. And I was kind of like, wow, okay, well, if you've only explored 10% of it, at least 90% unexplored. And maybe, I don't know, we'd have to talk with John about that.
Yeah. And we've asked him on the show, and he's been a busy man. We haven't been able to.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. No doubt about it.
Yep.
But yeah, he, I'm not sure how to really answer that. I get his perspective and I had mine. So, it's just something that I think is kind of left unresolved and so forth. And, clearly going back, we've seen where he did pick up the rock because we have shots before of it being there, then it's gone. And the next time we scan the tunnel. So it's just something I think that needs, if they were to put more time and effort into Oak Island, and 10X, I think that'd be something we'd need to kind of figure out on how to get back down there and really take a hard look. Because part of my understanding of 10X on the bottom down there in the cavity was done also by photographic evidence. I don't go off and just say things like acoustically. And I can't remember this guy's name, but he was a geotechnical engineer at a Canadian university. I don't know I forget which university. I think it's in Nova Scotia, but I forget. But he's a geotechnical engineer on the show. He showed me pictures of the bottom of 10X, and there it looked like a box, and there it looked like a body, seeing it photographically. And I was like, okay, that gives credence to what the sonar is seeing. And then John went down there, and in his interpretation of the bottom is that it was a different type of sediment. It was a different type of texture that was down there that gave the appearance of the formation of look like a body. And then he picked up and moved the rock, and that you know, it fit the dimensions of the top of a chest or box or whatever. And okay, that takes care of that. And so it was just something that, okay, strike two, you know, and, you know, you just need one more and you're out. And I think since it really wasn't what they were after, they didn't find treasure. He didn't find, you know, tools or implements like an axe or pickaxe or shovel or anything like that down there. Okay, we need to stop spending our money, spending our time on 10X. We need to move on to something different. Let's go back to the money pit. Let's regroup and rethink about what we need to do here and try and find some better direction to figure out what went on this island here. So,
Brian, I have a question for you. You spoke to Dan Blankenship at length. After these findings, your findings through sonar, and then when the divers went down there and poked around, did Dan Blankenship revise his own theory about the 10X?
No, Dan, you got to say, Dan was very secretive of stuff on the island, as all treasure hunters are. That's just the way they are. He's not going to show you his cards at all. I think he was disappointed. I think he probably disagreed with John Chatterton. But, you know, he didn't raise a ruckus as far as I know. He really believed in 10X as it was going to take him. You know, he spent 30 years trying to get to the bottom of it and stuff. So what he's got to believe in it. And the same with Dan Henske too, that worked for Dan on the island there and stuff. So I think there was a lot of, you know, heartache that, well, you know, what I seen, what I did, what I looked at down there at the bottom of 10X, this is what I saw. And, you know, you can't deny that of what a person sees and so forth. So I think he was really kind of disappointed in it, but it took Oak Island into a whole different direction, I think, that I don't think would have been found, you know, this wharf system, this road system, the swamp, you know, Nolan's Cross, all this type of different theories that come out about Oak Island and stuff throughout the years that have evolved on the TV show. So
the first divers went into the 10X in the 1970s. So we're talking 50 years ago. Is it possible that if there were objects or bodies at the bottom of 10X in the 1970s, that they have since fallen apart, deteriorated because of all the exploration or exposure to oxygen, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's really, you'd have to do a study, geochemistry of the water, to find out how much oxygen's there to begin with and what type of animal life is down there, from bacteria to little critters, because they're going to start the deterioration of a body over time. You know, we have Lake Superior that, you know, the old saying is that she never gives up her dead. And you can still go on shipwrecks in Lake Superior and see bodies from 100 years ago and stuff. So there's general tendencies, like if you're in the ocean in the Caribbean and a body gets put in the ocean, it's probably gone in 2 days because of the animal life, the temperature, the bacteria. The body just gets eaten up and decayed real fast. So you've got to understand that. But on the other hand, let's just hypothetically say somebody in, you know, Jacques de Molay sent a whole fleet over to Nova Scotia and they used Oak Island. So you're talking the early 1300s. So you're talking, you know, almost 700 years a body would have been down there. So what would have been left of that body over time? You know, maybe there's bones buried in the sediment down there. Who knows? Or maybe that isn't a body and stuff. So you've got to take a lot of different angles on perspective about what type of environment is the body going to be in? What type of environment are the tools going to be left in? And, you know, over time and so forth, what happens to that body? So there's a lot of unique things can happen with bodies over time, especially in cold environments and so forth. So,
well, they found bone fragments elsewhere on the island.
Yeah.
Great depth. So there is somebody under the island.
Somebody made it down there.
Yeah.
That's 100% right. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying it's a Templar night, but
yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, I don't remember what they were dating those bones at, carbon 14 dating, but You're absolutely right. How did bone get down in the bottom of those shafts, and they're like 130 feet down and stuff like that? So somebody was down there, and somebody came to an unfortunate end. You know, and I don't know if that's part of the original, 7 people or 6 people that have passed away on the island, or is that somebody that we don't know anything about, and they're trying to figure things out from a different perspective, coming at the tunnel from a different angle, or somebody was working down there and they had a collapse and they had to go around a different way, and they just left that person there. Yep. So there's like Oak Island, you can throw the dart at the board and no one's going to say that's a bad throw.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many weird things on Oak Island.
Yeah, there was two. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alessandra.
Well, I just wanted to know if anything strange happened to you on Oak Island.
Oh yeah, it's a weird place. Especially with the TV crew guys and the film guys, they'll put brand new batteries in the morning at say 7 o'clock. By 7:30, they're dead, and these batteries are supposed to last 8 or 9 hours. And I love Oak Island. It's a beautiful place. I love coming out in the summertime with the pines and the trees and everything. It's just a really quiet, beautiful place. But at nighttime, there's a lot of heebie-jeebie stuff. I mean, I've walked along the roads and stuff like this, and it's like, this is kind of strange out here. So there's a lot of, like I said, I've never seen ghosts. I've never seen anything like that on Oak Island. But there's a lot of weird stuff that just happens, like little stuff. Batteries die, stuff doesn't work, and it had been working fine when it came on the island. Equipment, welders, all that type of stuff. There's just a lot of strange things like that what happen on the island that, car batteries can die and all this type of stuff. So it's really strange with everything there. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. And that's something that, and again, going to that paranormal side, we know that they've had some investigators. I think Kano was out there. Kano, I believe is his name is pronounced. He was out there with Matty Blake and did an investigation. So, and that's something I would love to do because I'm kind of into that paranormal realm myself. So, I mean, that's I would love to do that out on the Pam said a spooky sounds coming from through the trees. Yeah, I bet so. Now those 2 bones, and I'm sure somebody will come up and tell us here, but yeah, there were 2 different people of the bones fragments that were found, and I think that was H8.
One was from Middle East.
Yes, Middle East and European. I think it's something like one was Middle East, one was European, and somebody can give Brian Kano. Yeah, somebody can give us a dating on that. I'm sure one of that. I tell you what, we have the best group of people in our Facebook group. Oh, we're at 9,000 people now. Members, and I tell you what, they know all I have to do on a show is just throw out the question, and we got 10, 15 people telling me the answer, so that's what I love about them. One of the things that questions that some of the people had here before we get off the subject of 10X, which we could talk about all night, quite honestly, Barbara D asked the question, there's always talk of draining the 10X and getting in there, but in a professional opinion, which is more hazardous? Diving into an area like that or splunking into a newly drained cavern where the walls may not be stable without water support? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a great question how to figure something out. I think the best thing to do to figure something out is do it in a dry. And that means driving sheet pile. There's also new technology called ground freezing. They'll actually freeze the ground and pull out plugs of it, and everything around it is frozen, so you can get down and do that. I would be very nervous of drilling a shaft and having somebody jump in it, and kind of, because I remember when they drilled the shaft over near the Money Pit area, and I put the sonar down, and you could just see the walls just kind of slowly come in on the sonar. And when I pulled the sonar out, it was covered in mud and everything, so it was slowly collapsing around there and stuff like that. So it's better, maybe if you did it where it's somewhat of a stable channel regime where the water pressure doesn't change a lot and so forth, and it's going to be stable there. Yeah, you could probably dive it, but I recommend anytime you do something like that, you build a caisson. as they do it for bridges or dams or
Right.
whatever, oil rigs and so forth, that you pump the water out of it and you have a dry working environment inside.
Exactly.
Kind of like what they did on the Cove down there at
Yes.
at the bottom of 10X,
Yep.
down there in the water. So
Or what we'd like to see them do in the swamp.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to this year. But there's two areas in the swamp I would like to see. One would be where they found the wood anomaly on the south. It was the southeast or southwest side, or south. Maybe it was straight down in the south in the middle there. They found that wood anomaly right at the end of last season. That they were talking about putting a cofferdam around and digging that out. But also the eye of the swamp. I'm a big proponent of that. Eye means more. There's more to that eye of the swamp than meets the eye.
yeah.
That was terrible.
You
Sorry.
know,
Yeah.
one of the things I find fascinating about the island, that there is never a number of theories that the guys don't listen to.
Mhm.
Like Rick is, what you see on TV is pretty much what Rick is like. He is just a wonderful human being. Okay, just a great guy, and and they will listen to anybody that has a theory. And it may be, green men from Mars coming in and drilling holes or whatever. And it may be somebody talking about Templar Knights.
Mhm.
And I find it truly amazing, the in-depth theories that people will give them. I mean, we're talking hundreds of pages of research.
Mhm.
And I don't even know, my mind doesn't think that way. That to sit down and to come up with a picture from the Middle Ages and to draw these connotations of stars and constellations and translate that to the stars in the sky.
Yep.
And put that over Oak Island, and you come down. I'm just pulling stuff, crazy stuff right now, but that makes Nolan's Cross come up.
Yep.
And all these correlations that come in that people have, and these boundary lines and intersections from Scotland to the Middle East to Oak Island and stuff. I mean, I don't even know how to begin with something like this, and I find that truly amazing. The people that come up with these theories and ideas, and Rick and those guys, they'll listen to them all. Some of them are crackpots, but other ones you go, wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, and
And-
we've had many of those people on the show.
Yeah.
I'd talk about their theories. I tell you,
Yeah.
there is some really good ones out there. And you're right. You have to, and I think Rick and Marty have actually talked about that. You have to at least listen to it and think about whether or not it's viable. And again, there's some that are just going to be completely, like aliens did not deposit anything on Oak Island. But, but there's also a point where you have to look at it. But as Rick always says, it's a theory is just a theory until you can hold it in your hands, so, there's that too. Before we get off 10X, we're about an hour and 15 in, and I want to get on to Beyond Oak Island a little bit as well. But Kate brought up a good point here too. She was wondering about the fact of whether or not there would ever be like to see an underwater drone or something to get some great camera work, if that would help. Again, we know that Marty was like, okay, X on 10X, we're done, we're moving on, we're not going to go there. And Rick was like, I'm not done with it. So we know there was a little conflict between the two. What's your thought about 10X? Are we done with it? Are they done with it?
I think they're done with it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything to go back. Here's my take on the whole thing. They have found everything from buildings to wharf to structures to rock formations, everything on that. But no one has found a piece of treasure that says, oh, this is a Spanish doubloon. This is a piece of 8. This is a Templar piece of gold.
Mhm.
Okay. No one's found anything there. In 10X, I think it's fascinating. It's interesting to really look at and try and understand. But I think spending any more resources and time, it's not going to get you where you need to go, because they're about finding the treasure.
Right.
They're also Rick's about telling the story about everything and moving that whole process forward. But then again, I haven't seen anything where, and as far as I know, and that they found a piece of treasure, a silver cup or gold cup, or, something that a crucifix of solid gold or whatever it may be, that would say, okay, this is indication of, the Spanish treasure fleet came up here in 1588 and so forth and took refuge and buried their treasure. So
Right.
I don't know, but I would say that 10X is pretty much done.
Yep.
And I would be surprised if they ever went back to it.
Right. And as Linda mentioned here, even if there were tunnels there in 10X, at this point, we know John's been down there. You've had your scanning down there. You've had the cameras down there. There's no treasure down there in 10X. So at this point, like Linda says,
yep,
why continue looking into it? I was curious, about the fact that, and I was talking about this in the pre-show just a little bit, about the fact that there, when you had said that there was tunnels, and I'm going to bring this picture up and then we're going to get off the subject altogether for a little bit. But this picture here showing this tunnel. Now, when I was looking at this earlier, with west being here, east being here, so this would be north. Whoops, sorry, I was on the wrong screen there. East being here and west being here. So north would have to be down here, south up here. If there was a tunnel coming out of the southeast side or south side, that would be heading towards the money pit from where 10X sits.
Yeah.
So that could have been some sort of a way through there, but without any evidence of there being really, other than the fact that there was a right angle like you saw right here.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that there was a right angle found, there's really no strong evidence to say that there's any left behind evidence of man-made work in there. We thought there was the post, we thought there was the body, we thought there was the box, and the shelf with things on them. It just didn't pan out. So you're right. Yeah. Time to move on from 10X and head for something else. But I did notice that and I like that, the fact that it had the navigation here with the east, northeast, southwest, and then looking at the fact that if there were a tunnel heading off this way, it was probably heading towards the money pit. And then on the north side, it was obviously heading somewhere. We don't know where at this point. Yeah. So interesting. And now we know that you were also involved in the Beyond Oak Island, and you were working with Marty, going out to Lake Michigan, and looking at off of Poverty Island. And again, this is a time where they came and they gathered you up to come out and do some scanning of that area, with that same, I think it was the same unit you were using here.
Yeah.
Okay. So Poverty Island, tell us a little bit about, kind of give us a little brief about what they were looking for and possibly from whom, if that's something that you're familiar with.
Yeah, a little bit. Michigan what people don't know, Michigan has a great history of pirates. And especially in that area. People don't realize, there was rape, pillage, and plunder back in the early 1800s. There were people that would knock lighthouses out and set fire on ships, and so other ships would run aground, and they would go out, steal the cargo, kill people, everything. And my understanding is that there's different angles that's coming at that. Some I've heard it was payroll in silver or payroll in gold for lumber camps. It was a ship being brought up to pay people, and that ship sunk with 3 boxes of gold on it. Okay. There in the 1930s and so forth, that's another great era that you might want to investigate sometime, about the gangs of Chicago and Detroit, the purple gangs running whiskey and liquor out through all the Great Lakes. It's a fascinating story.
Yep.
But those guys would hire diving companies to come out and do salvage operations to recover whiskey ships that had sunk and so forth. So my understanding is that there was a ship called the Lorne Castle, all right, that went out and was working around the Poverty Island area. And on Poverty Island, there is a lighthouse that used to be in operation, and there was a family on board. And these guys actually found the ship, salvaged the treasure and stuff. There you go, right there. And so forth. And a storm came in, and these guys, their ship had a really difficult time, because what happens in this area, it's very shallow all the way across to Wisconsin or Escanaba area.
Oh,
And
wow.
you'll have a storm come in from the west, and it'll actually push out the water 5 or 6 feet into
Wow.
Lake Michigan from this area. So they're called seiches. They'll push the whole Great Lakes one direction. They're the difference of pressure.
Wow.
And so then they'll come rushing back in, and these ships get caught in these whirlpools around Poverty Island, Summer Island, Washington Island, and stuff. So this ship, in order to get everything off board and get rid of stuff, they threw everything together. And the story goes that they took 3 chains and the 3 boxes and put a chain link on each one and threw them over the side, and hoping that they could come back, because there was a boy on the lighthouse that could hear people talking about they found the treasure, and whether they were a mile or half mile. I've been on Poverty Island a lot, working in that area over the years, and so you had this whole thing where you can hear people talk from a half mile away out on the water. It's so calm out there at times, and so they threw it over, and they never came back to get it, as the story goes.
Right.
So that's what I know about it and stuff. So there's people that believe that that's where the first sailing ship of the Great Lakes disappeared, the Griffin, in that area.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So they're doing that. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, there was an article that they showed, and I'll bring that up here real quick. Yeah. Inside the consuming obsession with finding the 300-year-old Griffin.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting story in itself right there. And as you said, the Great Lakes is well known for having a lot of shipwrecks. A lot of them.
Huge.
Yeah. And I remember going to a living up there, and I didn't know that about the where you were talking about the water moving like that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. But I remember going to a restaurant one time and sitting down, and they had, this is a silly story, but they had placemats. As you sat down, you had the little paper placemats right there. Each one of those had a list of most of the known shipwrecks around the Great Lakes, at least the more famous ones. And it was covered with shipwrecks all around the Great Lakes. It was phenomenal. I never had realized that there were so many.
They estimate I've heard anywhere between 6 and 14,000 shipwrecks in the Great Lakes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Because it is pretty treacherous waters.
Yes.
So there you go, back off of the Garden Peninsula, sticking out there from an Escanaba being up in this range, and then Poverty Island. So it's not a very big island, but it is kind of situated in a spot where, if you're going to be passing by through there quite a bit, and you would see ships coming in. Now, and again, we saw from the show that and I don't know if I can bring that one picture back up here. Let's see. You could see, and we saw it on the show. There's some folks that you had with you. These rocks that go out, and even right here, you can see like rocks showing up, not that far off the shore.
Yeah.
So not very deep of water for sure.
No.
And a ship's going to get tangled up in that and sunk very quickly.
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about these 2 gentlemen you had with you. There's Luke Claiborne. I guess he was. I don't know if you actually knew him or got to talk to him.
No, I never met Luke at all.
And this gentleman here.
Yeah, Robert was a fascinating person. I found his job. He worked for Ford as a historian and photographer and stuff, and he would do history on Ford plants. I found him a really interesting person, and knew a lot about Poverty Island and stuff, about the history, and he'd spent time on Poverty Island and stuff. So he brought a lot to the table on stuff. He was a really nice person too. I really enjoyed talking with him and meeting him and stuff. So it was a good time with him. So,
and we know this is your piece of equipment that you had set up there.
Yep.
And you had taken that and then been able to mount it into this. And I think this is fascinating that you were able to do this. Is this something that just comes with it, or it kind of looks like something that was made?
It was made. So.
Yep. That's really neat. I like that. And then what's nice about this is you're able to lower it down and set it right on the ground, or at the bottom of the lake, and then be able to start conducting your scanning of that. So during the scanning that you took, and again we saw. I think they showed us two places where you put it down, and I'm sure there was probably more than that, was there not?
Yeah, there's a few more.
So you probably spent more, like the most of the day out there, I would think.
Yeah, we spent a lot of the day out there looking for stuff, and probably did, I don't know, 10, 15 drops out there, looking at things. You know, it's a very hard, rocky bottom, a lot of boulders, a lot of cobble fields, a lot of broken rock. It's a huge limestone formation out there. So yeah, I'm giving out
basically how it works. Yep.
Yeah, pretty much, you know, and stuff. It's a very benign bottom. There's not a lot down there and stuff. There are a few other shipwrecks around the islands there that are really pretty phenomenal, pretty fascinating to go look at and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's an interesting a place. I love it because there's no phone service, there's no internet, there's nothing up there. Okay, so it's one of the few places in the American or maybe North America that you can go and get away and see what it was like to be 1975 all over again. And nobody knows where you're at. Nobody knows what's going on because nobody knows where they can't get a hold of you. And I love it up there.
Yeah.
So it's done out of we work out of a little fishing camp called Fairport. It's the Indians who run a commercial fishing operations out of there. Then there's a lot of recreational fishermen come out of there too. So it's a really neat, quiet area. I really love it up there.
This is a shot that was taken when you did find at one point, and I think it was this particular anomaly that came up right here. And also there was something over here. I don't know if that was a shadow that was being cast.
Probably it was a shadow. Looks like a shadow. That too. It's casting a shadow.
So, I mean, you know, obviously you found several things down there, but you had mentioned, and this is where I wanted to get into some of the other equipment real quick. You had mentioned, and I think even Rick said, you know, it mentioned, well, we probably should have come out with some side scanning or something like that rather than this one. Do those first, find some points, then come out and drop this.
Right.
Is that kind of?
Yes, that's an excellent point. This piece of equipment, it's made by Kongsberg Misatech. It's called the MS-1000 scanning sonar. It's the model number 1171. And so this is a precision type tool. It's designed for small areas but high detail. And its weakness is it's got to be stable. If it's shaking and moving, you won't be able to get a really good sonar image. So if it's stable, you can do pretty cool, phenomenal things with it, especially when you're working on structures, bridges or dams and so forth. But it takes forever to do things with this, and to pick it up and move it to another location, you have to have extremely accurate GPS. So way they've worked in the world, there's several different types of instruments now. The old one, kind of that everybody knows about and heard about because it's been around for 50 years, is side scan. And that's a towed fish that you put in the water and you pull it on an umbilical cable or a power cord, and it takes an image on both sides and you get to see the bottom. So you got to come out and mow the grass. Mm-hmm. The problem with side scan is that if you're working in 100 feet of water, you need about 400 feet of cable to really be able to get that down to the depth you need at. So if you're working, say you're working in 10,000 feet of water, you need 40,000 feet of cable. And think about that. So logistically, it's huge to come up with that type of cable. So you need different ways to get side scan down there. So a lot of people are using autonomous vehicles now that can go down to 3,000 meters, 6,000 meters, and they have side scan built in, and they'll just come back and mow the grass. Mm-hmm. Then when they're done after 24, 48 hours, they'll come back up to the surface, and you go out, pick them up, download the data, recharge the batteries or put new batteries in and send it back down again. Another type of example of it's called multi-beam, and it's just really what it says. It's multiple beams shooting out into the water column, coming down, hitting the bottom and reflecting back up. And that can cover a pretty wide swath depending on your depth and so forth. So you can have, 200-300 foot swath areas where you go over and you come back and you mow the grass again, but you can cover large areas that would take weeks to do with the scanning sonar may take a day to do with the multi-beam.
Wow.
So I think I mentioned something on the show that it was the wrong instrument for the job. It's still it can be the right tool, but you need the right tool. If you have a Phillips screwdriver, you can't put it into a flat screw, so you need the right tool for the job. And that's part of what you need to figure out, and how to understand what's going on in the environment and so forth. So
any plans of going back and doing some of that?
I'd like to. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff up there that needs to be looked at. I'd love to. I'm going to try and get a multi-beam system up there and just go kind of all over the area, especially between Poverty Island and the Wisconsin side. Around those islands, go out like 3-4 miles out and just kind of just mow the grass and throw a grill on the ship and some coolers and spend the nights out there too if it's calm. So
yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I would be on board for that. So yeah, I'm going to show this picture again real quick. So that'd be like over in this area.
Yeah, over in those areas there.
Yeah,
stuff. So yeah, it's a nice area. So
well, you're based out of Michigan, so it's not that far for you to be able to load up and head over there.
It's about 6 hours because you got to go up and over.
Yeah.
So but
you're coming in from the UP side.
Yeah, coming in. It's about 3.5 hours to the bridge, and it's about 2.5 hours over there to Fairport. So, but it's an awesome ride. I love it, going across Lake Michigan and so forth. So that
I guess. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alessandra, please.
Oh no, you finish, and then I will ask a question.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just gonna talk about that. It was just simply fascinating for me to hear about all of this. But then kind of, when the show wrapped up, talking about the fact that, well, we really need to come back with some side scanning or multi-beam and take another look at this. And that left us all kind of hanging out there with, okay, is that going to happen? And that's why I asked that question. So apparently, and I know that with NDAs and all that, you can't talk about if you were set up to do that again with Marty. But I tell you what, I would be personally fascinated if you were to do something like that and go back and have another look. Certainly tell us about it. If it's not part of a show, I would still like to know about it. If you and I stay in contact, if you do ever get an opportunity, I would love to talk with you about that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have not heard boo on anything. I have no paperwork that says keep my mouth shut, can't talk about it. I think part of that Beyond Oak Island was created because of COVID, because people couldn't get into Canada. They couldn't do work up there, so the season was short.
Yep.
Stuff, and they needed opportunities. And it's really a shame because there's so much legend and lore in the Great Lakes that people haven't looked at. And from shipwrecks to I've found stone alignments on East or West Bay and Traverse City with circles and squares and rectangles that are 3,000 feet long that have carvings on them, that if they were done in the dry, they had to been done 7,000-8,000 years ago, which is older than Stonehenge. And and I've worked with the University of Michigan a little bit with Professor John O'Shea. He's found the same type of alignments out in Lake Huron. If you leave the eastern shore of Michigan on Lake Huron side and travel east to Canada, it's a slow, gradual slope out there to about from 0 to about 300 feet. Wow. Then within a half a mile, quarter mile, it jumps from 300 feet to 100 feet. So you got this Amberley Ridge out there. Mm-hmm. And, 7,000-8,000 years ago, that was dry land. And here's something that's really, this blew me away. They've been working out there for about 7-8 years now, and they've actually found hunting camps out there, and they found chert flakes and so forth, where guys are making arrows and all that type of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
And they actually did a chemical analysis with 3 different labs to prove, and this is a professionally published white paper and everything, that the chert, or the obsidian, I should say, came from Central Oregon. I mean, think about that for a minute. Okay, that stone came from a mine in Central Oregon all the way to the Great Lakes region.
Wow.
Okay. Same thing with probably the copper, on Isle Royal. The native populations were up there mining thousands of years ago. That copper traveled all through the U.S. But, this is 8,000 years ago, and you've got, human populations that are hunting out there, caribou, whatever it may be, out there on this Amberley Ridge. And I find that's what I find truly fascinating too. I mean, he's got all the scientific data, and it's fascinating to work with these guys and get a couple of papers with my name on them. He's been generous enough to allow me to be a kind of like co-author.
Wow, that's fantastic. I would love to get more information about that. Go ahead, Alessandra. I know you had some questions too.
Yes, Brian, a few years ago, I read an article about a Stonehenge-like structure on the bottom of Lake Michigan.
Yeah, that was
and
me.
There's a mastodon,
Yep.
or like mastodon or a mammoth. I don't quite know the difference.
Okay.
Carved into one of the standing stones. So what was that?
Yep,
something?
that was us. Yeah, I worked with a
you?
professor called Mark Holly out of Northwest Michigan College. We were out, looking for a shipwreck called the Tramp, and we just put down the sonar. And I'm sitting there looking at the sonar, and you know how I have the different circles on the different distances. Well, all these stones started to line up on the circles and stuff, and so it's been all over this is like 2007. And no one's done anything with it since. But yeah, and another guy, Chris Doyle and Mark Holly, dove on we found a rock formation that's a circle. Wow. And on one of the rocks down there, they found a carving of a mastodon. And the thing is, it's not like a scratch, like it's actually percussion hits where somebody took, rock on rock and hit it out the ground.
Right.
And so there could be more down there. It hasn't been investigated. It needs a thorough investigation by some really good archaeologists that can work on this. And it'd be a great master's project for somebody. Wow. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, but we found that back in 2007, I believe. Wow. Yeah, and I've got, if you want to see pictures of it, I got all the pictures and stuff.
I'd love to.
I'd love to, yes.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, you'll have to share those with us, man. That is really fascinating because, and I was just thinking while you were talking about that, because we've become friends over the last several months with Sean Williamson over the UK. He's working with Team Templar North America, and he's a stonemason. He's a master sculptor and a stonemason. So I'd love to. I mean, I wonder if he dives. I wonder if he.
I would love to have somebody like that. I'd send him the pictures just to have him take a look, because we got blown up pictures. But the final straw for me on this whole thing, and a lot of people thought we made it up, we did it. This rock is big. It's like a coffee table size. It probably weighs 4 or 5 tons.
Wow.
And it's probably 2.5, 3 feet high. And the final straw for me in this whole thing, you've got the outline of the mastodon on it and stuff. But there's a straight line that goes across. And then you've got a hump that goes over this straight line. And it doesn't mean anything to me, but the local native population, because they have ownership of this alignment and so forth through the federal government, said that they owned it because of a certain time period and so forth. But they said, do you know what that line and that hump are? And we said, no, we don't have a clue. I didn't. It didn't mean anything to me.
Right.
They said, in our ancient traditions, that's how we draw a spear. And it goes right into the side of the mastodon. And it's like, okay, that tells me right there that we have something.
Yep.
And like, I'm an engineer. Okay. I'm a sonar expert. I love archaeology. I'm fascinated by it, but I'm not an archaeologist that deals in rock carvings. Okay, somebody needs, that's into rock carvings, needs to go down and do a really good analysis of this to find out, well, no, Brian, you were drinking too much, and that was really done by, beach sand carvings and stuff like this from, 5,000 years ago. And so, it needs to be looked at from a really good scientific archaeological point of view, because I do believe it's something, because I've got squares and rectangles. I've got a dimension of like 26.5 feet all over the place, like measuring stone to stone and so forth is 26.5 feet.
Wow.
And all around it is dead flat. It's just sand on bottom except for these stone alignments. And working with the University of Michigan, what I've learned is that you can go to the Arctic now, and the native tribes up in Alaska or the Yukon or the territory, I forget what the province is called now in Canada, they still do the same type of hunting. Caribou will follow a straight line, and so these are straight lines. So what they would do is hide in these little encampments, and they would chase the caribou along the straight line, and they would jump out and attack them and kill them for food, survival, whatever it was. But it's interesting that you have a mastodon drawn on the rock too.
It is very.
And what I find, I don't want to get in trouble about this one, I find it very art form of European cave art. Okay. Because when I look at art, except for like the Pacific Northwest tribes where they have this beautiful symbolism with all these different types of drawings and carvings. I absolutely love that stuff. But if you compare it to other North American rock art that I've seen, it's very stick figure. This shows fluidity, and it shows an understanding of the movement and size and shape of the animal. This person that did this, 8,000 years ago or whatever it is. So I find that truly fascinating on it and stuff. So yeah, but that's that's what I love about, you go looking for a shipwreck and you find something like this
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So
I was wondering, I was thinking to myself when you were talking about, especially when you were talking about going up and doing the side scanning up in on the west side of Poverty Island and towards the Wisconsin side, and also this anomaly over here. I'm super intrigued by this, and then talking about the fact that Sean Williamson, is like I said, a master sculptor. I bet he'd be very. We're gonna hook you up. We're going to hook you up with Sean. Good. Sean is fascinating. I've had him on the show a couple of times. And he's over in the UK, and he's fascinating when it comes to this stuff. He knows his business when it comes. He's worked with the Sinclair family. He did a sculpture of Henry. Was it Henry Sinclair?
Sinclair. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he is really good. So I'd love to get you hooked up with him and share those pictures. I think he would find them fascinating. But on the other token, I know Wayne Murphy was on here. I don't know if he still is. But I was thinking to myself, if you're out there looking, and there's talk of the Templars being able to use, and somebody had mentioned it in the chat, using Oak Island as a rest stop, and making their way down through the St. Lawrence Seaway, coming up through the Great Lakes and making their way over to Wisconsin. Okay. If they did do that, Wayne's internet crashed. Okay. Thank you, Linda. If they did do that, then they would have there would possibly be maybe a shipwreck or some sort of shipwreck over that way that might be discovered by the side scanner multi-beam looking. I tell you what, I mean, I know there's so many shipwrecks, and Lord, I know.
Well, I'll go one up on you.
Go ahead.
I had done work in Sweden with the Swedish Maritime Museum on a transitional ship. It's around the 1400s, and it was a difference between the Viking longship and the Swedish naval power of the 1600s, and it was called the Dolorol shipwreck. But I found it, but I got to meet like 10 fantastic archaeologists from Swedish Maritime Center, and one of my delusions of grandeur, as I call it, is that before I die, I want to find a Viking ship in the Great Lakes.
I was going to ask you that if you ever found a Viking ship.
I have no proof whatsoever on anything, but I think if anybody could make it to the Great Lakes, it was the Vikings. Now, they may have came up through Hudson Bay, down the Red River into Minnesota, and come across through that way into Lake Superior. But if they did, I think, I'm going to try and find it. And so the guys in Sweden say, well, before you even do, you better call us because we're coming over with you and looking for this, because they, the Swedish Vikings made it all the way down the Volga River through Russia and everything into the the Caspian Sea and then on to Constantinople and stuff. So they sailed everywhere and then into North America. So that's my delusions of grandeur, as I call it. I'm always on the lookout for a Viking clinker ship. So,
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I mean, just think of the places we could go with this, Alessandra.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. Oh man.
Okay, Brian, you're going to have to take us with you.
Okay.
Yes.
For Viking
Yes.
ships.
Yes.
Not long. So
Yes, you will. My goodness. Oh, this just opens up all new information, folks. I mean, are you guys hearing this? This is fascinating stuff. I mean that I did hear about that circle of stones, but I didn't know anything about it. I'm so glad it was brought up here because that's fascinating. And just all of this, man, oh man. I tell you what, if all we need is money, right? And time.
And time. That's what I tell people. I can find anything underwater. You just give me enough money and enough time, and I will find it.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's just
okay. We gotta get a hold of Marty again.
I do have one more question, Brian.
Sure.
Did you do any investigation around Oak Island? So
yes.
Not necessarily under, but around it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a question that the Awoken one asked, that same type of thing about looking around the island and doing some scans. Go ahead.
Yeah, we did a full scan with the sonar all the way around the island. It was really difficult because there's such a huge boulder field out there that it was difficult to see things, especially in Smith Coves area and so forth. We didn't see a lot of things on Smith Coves. On the south end of the island, we got to see a lot more type things. There's a lot of big boulder erratics around the island. We did not see anything that was like, okay, that needs to be investigated and stuff. I mean, what was cool about it, we found a couple springs out in like 600, 700 feet off Oak Island to the south, where you have natural groundwater coming up and you see a difference in density in material. So it's kind of like this mass coming through the water column and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. But as far as finding anything historical or artifact wise, we did not. And there's also, I forget the name of it. This is between the mainland and Oak Island. There's a little island right there. It's right off the causeway. We did
Plum Island. I think it's Plum Island.
Yes, you're right. Plum Island. We did another investigation around there. I think that's kind of man-made. Plum Island. It's very circular, very round, very uniform and everything. So
that's owned by Robert Young. Plum Island.
Okay.
Robert Young. He also owns Lot 5, I think.
I think that needs to be investigated. What it is, I have no idea and stuff like that. Somebody may have just built it for the sake of building it. You know, I've done things in Scotland where they have these ancient stone piles in the middle of these big locks, and they're called crannogs, and people used to live on them, and they're just piles of rock. Wow. That's all they are, and they would build houses on them and stuff like that. And they're ancient. They go back to the Bronze Age, Stone Age time period, 3,000-4,000 years ago. And that's what Plum Island kind of reminds me of, is a cranog from Scotland or Ireland and so forth that people would live on and so forth. So but that's my personal opinion. I have no proof of that, but that's what it kind of reminds me of. This type of structure that was man-made. So,
wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So we know that we even saw that Tony Sampson had gone out and he was doing some scanning around when one of his pontoon tour boats. They were out there doing some scanning and they were looking for anomalies in the water. And didn't find a whole lot, but there was also talk, and I know this is a tangent. We got about 10 minutes before 2 hours, and we'll call it good. This has been fascinating. I'm so intrigued by everything that you've been talking about. But there's the shipwreck. I'm at a loss for a name, Alessandra. Isn't there like a famous shipwreck that's supposed to be close to Oak Island or just out?
Well, I wish I'd known that. I'd been out there imaging that shipwreck.
I know that. I think James McQuiston was talking about it.
Okay. Yes. So James McQuiston is a theorist and an author. He wrote like 8 books about Oak Island, and he mentions a ship that would have dated to the 1600s, and he believes that it was that the crew was Scottish. So it was a Scottish ship, and it would have belonged to Sir William Alexander or one of his men, and that one went down in a storm, and it's still somewhere in Mahone Bay, and that it has, I believe, found silver forks on that ship, in the wreckage of the ship, that have a symbol of a stag.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
Wow.
so
Neat.
silver forks with the stag, and that was the symbol of the Strachan family from
Okay.
Scotland. Yes.
Yeah,
All
Tony Sampson was talking about it too, and I think he. I was trying to, and I can't think of the name of it for the life of me. I just asked Linda real quick if she can remember what that was, but there was a name of that ship out there, supposedly. Again, I don't. I'm not a.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be somewhere. I know somewhere near Oak Island there. I should have just said I can't find it that fast. Sorry, somebody else might be able to think of it. But anyway, so. We'd love to see if we'll have to look into that too, and to see what we can, give you some information about that, and see what can be found. Let's see here. I want to see, there's a couple of good questions popping up. Like I said, we're just about done here. Let's see. There's mounting evidence to the point. Yeah, she said there's definitely a shipwreck very near the island. Cast members have talked about it. Yes, there, and I can't think of the name of it. I want to say Alexandria or something. No, it's not that. Anyway, let's see. And this was John Edwards. Actually, John is going to be co-hosting with me, doing some shows here coming up. He said there's mounting evidence that points to the path the Templars stemming from Oak Island, traveling through the St. Lawrence Seaway water passage. Now it's finding the archaeological evidence. Alessandra, can you talk to Brian about your observation of how the names of the cities and the waterways correlate to the names of Middle Eastern cities?
Okay. All right. So
let's see if I can find that picture again.
By pure coincidence, I found that 3 major cities along the Great Lakes, around the Great Lakes in North America, namely Montreal, Toronto, and Detroit, that their names are very close, that they closely resemble the names of Templar or Crusader castles in the Middle East, namely in Jordan and Israel. So there was a Templar castle named Montreal. There was a castle named Toron, so not quite Toronto, but close. And another castle called Detroit, which is very similar to Detroit. So I've
got to take care of something just happened. I'll be right back. I got to check on something.
Okay. Yeah, this is really interesting, because you just you add an S and you got Detroit, or take away the S and you got Detroit, and also Toronto and Toron. I mean, this is fascinating stuff right here. I mean, and there's going to be more, as I know there's several people actually looking into this now, and I hope they're working with you.
Well, I hope that they report back to me, because I have been looking high and low for more information about these 3 locations and how they could somehow be linked to these medieval Templar or Crusader castles and fortresses that still exist. By the way, all 3 of them still exist in modern Israel and Jordan. And what's interesting about Detroit is that the Crusader fortress that was named Detroit, one of the builders of Detroit was Hugh de Payenne, who was the founder of the Knights Templar. So that's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
I apologize. My dogs were getting into something, and they can terrorize things pretty bad, and I didn't want a big mess.
No
Yeah, I'm
problem at
getting a
all.
little tired here. I don't sound very coherent. It's
No,
10:26.
I know. Like I said, we're wrapping up. We got about 4 minutes left, and
Yeah.
we'll call
And
it
I
good. But
don't drink coffee, so yeah, I need to finish this soon or
well,
I'll fall.
that's why you need this kind of stuff here.
What
I'm
is
not
that?
sponsored by anybody, but works wonders.
Sponsored.
Yeah. It works wonders. But yeah, this is a fascinating story, and we've got some people working on not me. I'll say requalify that. There are some people that I know that are working on this storyline here to try to get more evidence on it. And I think they're going to come up with some really, really interesting things. And like I said, I hope they're including you, Alessandra, because you are the one that brought this to the table for us when you and I had our
Yes,
one
I
of our
discovered it.
yeah, you discovered it. So you're and you've been researching this. I know. So definitely need to include you, and they're one one of them is watching right now. So you know who you are. So you make sure you talk to Alessandra about this.
Okay.
But
Well,
again, it goes.
I'm friendly, so and very approachable. So,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
they
So-
can write to me.
So yeah, I would love to see more investigation about this, and I think that I think Brian, I think you might be contacted by a few people here. I hope you don't mind if I
No.
share your email address with Alessandra
free.
for sure,
Yeah.
because I know you guys want to share some stuff, and also with
Yes.
Sean Williamson.
Okay.
I'd like
Yeah.
to share it. So I think that, man, and at me, I'm just a face on YouTube. So, I love bringing you all together to share this with everybody, and we all get an education. That's my part of this. I do a little bit of research, but not like they do. And I think that would be a fascinating thing to see all of you people getting together and looking into this. I think it's and with your experience of the Great Lakes and what else might be out there. Oh man, I can't imagine what we could discover from this. Fascinating stuff.
One of the great lines I've learned from archaeologists: if you want to find out what people were doing 6,000 years ago, find where the beach was, because people were living on the beach, okay, or right near the beach, and because water levels change over time. We can argue about global warming and all that type of stuff. And the other thing is that nobody went over the mountain to the valley below. They went around on water because they knew water was the highway up until 100 years ago.
Yep.
And everybody traveled by water. And, that's how Michigan, you had phenomenal city growth. And these cities are gone today. From, 150 years ago, you had cities that were as big as Detroit, and they're gone now. But they took everything by water. So figuring out the waterway systems, figuring out where the beach was, is critical to finding, the artifacts, the sunken cities, the shipwrecks, because everything traveled by ship and cargo was aboard ships.
Yep.
So, and you need a way to get it on the ship, transport it to a site, then take it off the ship. So that's what you need to find. So.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got people there. So you've really intrigued a lot of people. We've kept a really good crowd out here.
All
I tell you, this has been fascinating. I absolutely love, and I would love to have you come back sometime and go over some more things with us. And if you have other research that you're doing, again, it doesn't have to be Oak Island related. I would love to discuss it with you and hear some of the other stuff you've done.
Yeah.
Any parting questions for you, Alessandra, before we go?
Oh, I was just going to say something similar to what you said. I'm very happy that I was here tonight, and very excited to know that you were the one who found the Stonehenge on the bottom of Lake Michigan.
Oh, yes.
All right.
So I do hope we'll stay in touch, and that we can
absolutely
talk about the 3 cities on the Great Lakes that bear the names of temple castles.
Yeah, and I was scared to death, as a closing statement, scared to death that I did another TV show called Ancient Aliens.
Okay.
And actually it turned out the best of any of the shows. I've done probably 20 TV shows and BBC documentaries and stuff, and it turned out the best. But they really kind of get into the stone alignment and the carvings and stuff like this. I don't remember the show.
I was just going to ask you, what was the episode called?
I think it was season 8, if I remember right,
Write this
on
down.
Ancient Aliens. And they did a really nice show about the carvings, about bringing out the enhancing the rock carving of the mastodon and the stone alignment and stuff like that. So I was really, I thought, okay, I've gone off the deep end. I'm on Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. So it's just something that I was really kind of skeptical about, but it turned out really well. So if you can see that, that'll give you kind of an idea of what's going on with stuff with the stone alignment. Okay,
I'm definitely going to be checking that out.
Yeah.
I have one recommendation for our viewers, if I may.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
please.
there's a book called Canada's Stonehenge. I don't quite remember the author off the top of my head, but it's called Canada's Stonehenge, and he talks about stone circles in, I think, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, so on the prairie. And they're called sun wheels by the native people, but they are aligned with, I would say, winter solstice, summer solstice, the Pleiades. I have the book maybe somewhere behind me. No, I just have Templar books behind me, but I have several bookcases in my house.
No.
Yeah, so one of them is called, one of the books I have is called Canada Stonehenge, and it was, I think, a professor from a university in Alberta that mapped these stone circles, and the book is very nice. So there's not just the stone circle on the bottom of Lake Michigan. We also have them on the Canadian prairie.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, this has been a fascinating couple of hours. I cannot thank you enough, both Brian Abbott for coming on and sharing your insights with us and all of that. And also, Alessandra, thank you so much for co-hosting with me tonight. Love it when you do. You always help bring out so much more from our guests than I could possibly do. So I really do appreciate you very much. But again, Brian, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. I know that the folks have loved it. And again, this is out on YouTube. If you'd like, at some point, you can actually join our Facebook group. If you'd like, that's up to you. This is out there. It stays on our Facebook group, and it stays out on YouTube. And you can, share it with your friends or anyone else that you'd like. And sometimes, if we, there's a lot. We've got 170 comments already of people that have commented during the 2 hours here. So that if you'd like, you can always go back and kind of, because I know a lot of people have made questions or asked questions and said comments and stuff that I've missed because I'm paying attention to what's going on here. But I will throw that invite out to you if you'd like.
Okay, sure. I'd love to. So
go from there. So
yeah.
But again, thank you so much. Thanks, folks, for being here with us tonight. We're going to wrap things up. This has been fascinating with Brian Abbott and Alessandra. And I tell you what, like I said, thank you so much for being here. And if you're out there on YouTube side, please click on that subscribe button for us and click the notification bell if you'd like to know more about shows coming up. And as we bring up new content on there, we also have our Patreon channel. It is JFree906 if you'd like to help support the show. We do have a couple folks that do that, and we appreciate you very much. All right, everybody, I've had a great time. You can say goodnight, and we'll call it a good one.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for your attention. Bye, Brian. Bye, Jeff.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your time.
All right, hang out just a minute.